Let's talk about home gyms.
Home gyms.
Ooh, I know the COVID definitely ramped up that.
I can't tell you how many calls and emails I got from people like, where do I get equipment from? How do I build this out, man?
Because it was scarce, right?
It was
couldn't get anything.
Oh,
and
it's so
expensive.
hard to get stuff.
It's really hard to get it for, obviously you had there was the supply and the demand, but then there was also just like the materials to build it on and the supply chain issues and things like that. And that's all caught up now. I mean, it's not an issue, but we have a couple of local friends that had local, let's just say gym equipment stores that would sell to the general public as well as wholesale to people. And they just cleaned up. And, we even bought some stuff because we had to move outside and basically build an outdoor gym. And I didn't want to take a lot of our
good stuff,
our really expensive, as we preface this conversation, there's expense to building a home gym. And here we chose our equipment very specifically. And there was a lot of thought that went into it and a lot of money that went into it. And I didn't want it to be taking a lot of that out there. There was theft. We were burglarized a couple times.
First day.
There's weather. And, eventually we were coming back inside and we knew that and we didn't want to be compromising that stuff and having to start over. And there was a little bit of like, let's make an investment here because if we can get it, we can probably unload it at some point if we want to. We could sell it off to people and kind of maybe recover some of that investment. But yeah, so many people during that lockdown time spent so much money on their home gym stuff.
Yep. Trying to find bands and all this stuff.
I wonder how much of that stuff's actually being used anymore.
Yeah, I'd be curious.
Yeah,
I'm going to assume very little.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, we talk to people all the time that are like, yeah, no, I get my workouts, my weight training workouts done at home now. It works out great for me and whatever. But yeah, I mean, we'll never know how many people have just this equipment stacked in their garage or, in their basement or wherever it is.
But I can tell you as far as at least the clients that we have that ended up building out home gyms that I'm still coaching, they're still using their stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, they are.
And even a couple of our clients that moved out of the area that are still doing our online programming, they built out a home gym and they're using their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is people, they made the investment and they are using it. Those that figured it out are doing it. I walk the dog, I go out and walk the dog. I've shared that a lot of times every day at night. And there's garage doors open all over the neighborhoods we walk through and people are in there getting their workouts on. And there's some pretty solid setups.
That's
some
awesome.
people, let's just say it's very minimal, but you know what they're doing? They're using it, which is awesome. And so going back to that, I think a lot of people found other ways to get their health and fitness done and then prioritize their finance and their space that they had in order to like, hey man, I need to be more healthy. I want to continue doing this. I don't really need this facility. I've learned how to work out. I've had great coaches maybe that have showed me how to do more with less. And if I just had these things, I could get a really good workout in my gym, my home gym. I think there's always something to be said for getting a change of scenery. I think everybody can benefit by that. From time to time, walking into a gym and, getting your hands on new equipment, seeing new stuff and just having some fun, right? I mean, just experimenting and seeing different things. Because I don't care how much money or finance you have or space that you have, there's always going to be some cool piece of equipment that you don't have.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
That you want to try or have some fun with. So, but that said, people are still looking to build out or continue to build out the gyms that they have at home or their home workout setup. It's become more of a priority. It's awesome to see we get people onboarding our online programs constantly that are reaching out to us and saying, because when we're encouraging them to do that, hey, if you don't have this piece of equipment or you don't have a way of doing this particular exercise that we have, here's the alternative to that exercise. We do that within the program. The programs like Strong and Max, but in our online membership. But they also will ask us about, like, I do have this. What can I do with this? Yeah. So it's interesting to hear. So I know those people are out there and they got a lot of stuff. And they're also asking, like, hey, if I was going to buy something, like if I was going to remedy this little problem that I have, this issue, what would you do? What would I do? And where can I go to get it? Like, where do I resource this from? So maybe we just open up to like, hey, if you were going to build your gym, what would you get and how would you do it? And, us gym nerds, like Cece and I had the distinct opportunity to build out our own gym. Now, keep in mind, this is for a business model. So we were very specific how we built it out to support the business model that we have. And we are very much about
We've done it twice.
We've done it a couple of times. Actually, we've done it three or
Yeah.
4 times actually. But in terms of like the bigger spaces, we've done it. We've done it a couple of times. Again, very specific thought process go into this, and you do get some autonomy, obviously, in doing that to have some cool stuff. But going back, we were very much about let's do more with less. You don't necessarily need all this fancy stuff to get great results and help people move through space, which is what they need to be doing more of anyway. So we don't have a lot of selectorized equipment. That's the stuff with the pin and the weight stack, that's very, very specific to a specific movement pattern because it takes up real estate and it's it's not multidimensional in a lot of ways. It can be used separately. You can get creative with it, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for what we're doing here in terms of personalizing programs for people or taking people through the group sessions that we take them through. That said, we've learned a lot about how to utilize or do more with less. And so that's always my approach. But I'll tell you this, I like nice shit too, right? And I like having fun. So, if I was going to do it again or I was going to build my own personal gym, what would I put in it and how would I have it? I think there's that end of it too. But I think most people, particularly the ones that are starting out, are looking at it going, look, I got a budget here and I don't have a lot of places to put this stuff. I have a small garage or an office or a basement space or something like that. What do I put in there? And if I'm going to spend my money, this is my budget in this game, the markup on this equipment is ridiculous. Number one, to buy it. Number two, getting it to your house, because it's generally heavy duty steel, heavy metal plates and brackets and things like that. It costs a fortune to get it freighted to you.
Dude.
So that eats up a lot of the budget too. So maybe just giving some perspective to some people on how to maybe do this well. If finance and space is of no consequence or issue for you, well then fucking knock yourself out. We'll talk about that. But let's talk first about the person that has very little space to put this in, and also the different uses they might be using it for, their mindset coming into how am I going to use this space. So limited space, but also I think we want to look at like use case. How is this going to support you in your program? And I think in your fitness, and I think there's a couple of different things that we've learned, like how people use their own spaces. So I want to talk about that. So the first one, and I'll kick it off, is this is a person that does not have access to anything else or doesn't want to go anywhere else. They're like, I want to be left alone. I don't want to get fucked around.
I fucking feel it, dude.
Yeah, like I don't want to be talked to. I don't want to be. I don't want to be mean mugged. I don't want to be interrupted. I don't want to have to wait. I don't want to deal with the fucking cell phones and the Instagram shit that's happening in front of the mirror all day long. All this other bullshit. Like I just want to work out and work out. Yeah. That's all I want here. And I'm willing to make the investment, and I'm again willing to do to try to do more with less.
So that's the thing too. Like I would love to have a gym in my garage. I would use it 1000%, right? But we have a lot of people that they're still at home, right? And it's hard for them to get into that mindset of like, oh, I'm going to go train in my garage, where it's like, oh, I'm still at home. I can easily go on Netflix, or I can go and keep scrolling on the computer, right? So you really need to have that determination and want to train to be able to thrive in a home gym, right? Now, depending on where you want to go with your fitness, I'm sure having, a couple workouts in your garage or whatever exercise you're doing is fine. But if your goal is to get more fit, more healthy, you're going to want to be able to be on a plan and actually stick with it, even at home. Right?
God dang, Jeff, that's such a solid point that I hadn't even considered coming to this conversation. It's like, before you make this investment, you need to do a little soul searching and really take self-inventory of where you are and is this shit really going to get used? Because if you're the type of person who's gone through this process in your head I'm not a million, so let's say 10 times, and you have bought pieces of equipment over time, like I already have a treadmill, and I have an elliptical trainer, and I have a Peloton bike, and I have this Thigh Master, or whatever else is sitting around, and I never fucking use it. This is probably not the right place for you to be going down, because you're going to be investing in something you're not going to do. Just go down to your local gym, suck it up, pay the $40 a month to have access to all this stuff. And when you feel like using it, and you can go use it.
1,000%.
Yeah. Versus like me having the equipment will drive me and make me want to do this. That's a poor foundation for success.
I already know
poor
that
investment.
Yeah. I mean, if we were to have a home gym, it needs to be in a designated room that's specifically for that, nothing else. So there's zero distraction, because I can tell you, we have a range of kettlebells at home, and we took them home during COVID. I might have touched them once or twice. I'm like, I don't want to do this in my living room.
Right.
I don't want to do this outside.
No, that's real. Yeah.
Yeah. Same. I mean, I don't even want to do that in the gym that we own sometimes.
Well, you know what? I went and I got a membership somewhere else, and I talked to a couple of clients and were like, that's so funny that you went and got a gym membership somewhere else. And I'm like, well, sometimes a change of scenery, you know,
so
it's good.
So that is the other type of use case I would say here. And that would be like, okay, I might not use this all the time because I have access to this other gym or multiple places. Like I have a Pilates membership here and a cycling membership here and a yoga membership over here or whatever, right? And so I'm only going to use this for strictly my resistance training program, and my push, pull, squat, lunge, hinge, overhead press, all that stuff is going to happen in my garage or my space. But I'm going to do all my cardio work or my mobility work or all this stuff. I still have access to that outside of here. Or I just want it because my job's a little crazy or my life's a little crazy right now, or the way work works for me or my lifestyle goes. I find it hard to get there consistently, whether it's because of logistics or schedule or whatever else. So I want this as a backup, right? I want this as a backup versus my primary source of workout equipment and my space. So that's a really good way of looking at CC is like, okay, but maybe you're not going to do everything here. What are you going to do here? And so, I am going to keep my membership over here. So I have that when I need it. Like some people are already thinking that right now. I already talked to them like, fucking January's coming, man. Like, I don't even want to be anywhere near my gym. So I'm going to be working out at home for the first 30 days until all those people that signed up fall off and they never come back again till the following year. And then I'll go back to my membership. But it only costs me $30 or $40 a month. So I'll just keep it. It's worth paying. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm basically paying to not have to be annoyed.
Sauna access for me.
Yeah,
dude.
exactly.
Come on.
Yeah. So another way to look at it, like, what is your use case? Again, and this would be for the person that has very little space. So either or, like if we were going to set this up for you, and I think the best way to look at it is what way for us to break this down is like, if this is your primary space for working out, what would be the basic things you need in order to get great results, right? Build muscle, lose fat, get all the different, basically train your body through all the different planes and ranges of motion while adding load to those things, having fun, right? But not, thinking that you have to have every piece of equipment known to man in order to stimulate yourself. And when I mean stimulate yourself, I mean send the right signals to get the result that you're fucking looking for.
Yeah.
Right? Period. End of story. So let's start with like, what's that base piece of equipment? Like if there's one piece of equipment for you guys, what would it be?
Squat rack.
But you said for minimalist.
Yeah, dude, minimalist. Right? Like I'm still
as far as not having much square
no, hold on.
footage.
You don't have a lot of square footage. You're trying to do as much with you as you can with that, without. And what I was really saying was like, do more with less.
Okay.
So I don't have to have a million pieces of equipment in here. There's some staple pieces of equipment I'm going to have. So going back, like, what's that piece? You're saying a squat rack.
Yeah.
Some type of a power rack.
Yeah.
Yes, I would agree. If you're doing this in like a garage or something, but if you live in high density housing, then I would want something probably like the interchangeable dumbbell weight things.
Okay, so hold on, two things. Let's stick with the rack and let's go to the dumbbells. So the rack, why?
So the rack, the reason why is because you can squat in it, you can load it up for hip loaded RDL, anything like that, squat, bench press, all of these different variations.
Pulling, you can do body weight rows.
Deadlift, rack pull. I mean, everything on this rack, you can pull up, you can add a cable to the side of it, you can attach bands to it. I mean, if you had one thing, it's an anchor point, it's all of these things. You can get one that collapses to the wall, right? Pulls out. That and a bench.
Yeah, so let's stick with the rack. I agree with you 100% because it's not just for squatting, right? People think, oh, it's a squat rack. No, it's a power rack.
Yeah.
And now they make these racks. They're very modular.
Mm-hmm.
They collapse. You just said they collapse against the wall. They take up less space than they did. They've now started to make those at different heights, so you're not buying like a commercial piece of equipment that's massive and won't even fit, floor to ceiling in your room, whatever space you're putting it. They're really thought through these things. There's many manufacturers, so you have options as a consumer, but it's a holster for your barbell, right? At all these different levels. It's also an attachment point for your cables, because there are attachments that you can put on these things if you wanted some cable stuff or tubing or bands. I would want one that had the option for a pull-up bar on it, so that I can hang from it, but do my body weight movements from it. So without even having like a barbell yet to squat with, like there's many uses for that rack. And here's the other thing. Like people like right up front, like, and I'm going to go back to what you were saying before we move on to that one, because I like that one too. And that's the dumbbells, right? The adjustable ones.
Don't get me wrong. Like if you were to ask me one piece of equipment that I would want, I would say a power rack, hands down.
But here's the biggest reason, because if you stick with this and you actually stay committed and disciplined to your program, you're going to want one eventually.
Absolutely.
And you're going to realize how invaluable that is and how limited you are not having one there as like a base, like kind of like your home base for where your exercise is going to happen. There's so many things you can do off of a rack, so many things you can attach to. We've already ad nauseum, we've talked about this, but I would definitely want one of those. And again, they're so affordable now and they're so accessible now to the consumer. There really isn't any reason why you shouldn't have one, unless obviously finance just prohibits you from doing that. In which case, what are the alternatives for setting up like your barbell type movements, squats, hinging, bench pressing, things like that? What are some of the ways to maybe reduce your spend to get that and still get some value out of the equipment that you buy?
Well, they have the what do you call them? The movable racks, like squat racks that are adjustable. So
seen in like powerlifting competitions.
Yeah, the weight, the bar stands. Yeah, and those they take up very little footprint. They can literally be picked up and moved around.
So they come in a fixed unit as far as where you put the barbell in it, or in two independent ends that you can adjust as well. And then they come in various heights, or they're adjustable to various heights. So if you wanted to do a bench press, you could do a bench press. If you wanted to squat, you could do a squat. And you could do RDLs in it as well.
I started with those, in my own garage as a kid. And one thing I can tell you is they're generally pretty unstable. So you have to be very aware of what you're doing. But they were very portable. I can move them around so that we could still get dad's car in the garage at the end of the workout and whatever else. But those do exist if you want that. But I'm telling you, you're going to want a rack at some point. If you want to continue to progress your strength and conditioning program over time and overload your body over time, the rack is going to be invaluable. So get yourself a rack. That's where I would start. The next thing you got to do is like, now what am I going to push, pull, squat, hinge, lunge? Where would I go from there? Well, we already said like get a rack so that you can put your barbells on there. Barbells are an awesome piece of equipment, but they're not everything, right? And everything has a limitation. For sure. So and you don't have to or need to, or maybe you should be doing certain movements with a barbell, depending on where you are, who you are, how your body functions, what you're dealing with, as an individual. So the next thing, I would pick the adjustable dumbbells, or you need a full set of like dumbbells, but that's not realistic. It's a huge amount of cost there. Walk into any gym.
Take up a lot of space.
Take up tons of space. They are expensive. They are not cheap. We've already mentioned that. So having dumbbells that are adjustable are a key element, I think, long term.
Sure.
I think eventually you're going to want more, but that's a great place to start with regard to having that external load that you can add on. And there's some great companies out there that make these, but these things most people have seen these by now, like on Amazon or whatever. The original company to come out that these did a really good job was called Power Blocks, and they effectively, this is like a modular dumbbell, and it's square in shape, and your hand actually goes inside this frame, and then on the outside of that frame, effectively you're just adding additional frames with this use of like a pin, right? So you can select different weights up to as high as like, I believe they made them up to like 100 pounds at one point, maybe even 120. They get really big, but the standard set went up to 50 or 55 pounds. And that's enough for most people, particularly to get started. And you can get a lot done with those, you know, in your garage or in your home gym. I know there's a lot of strength conditioning rooms across the country and colleges that have those at the, you know, they have several stations. There's a power station, and each station has a set of power blocks at it, and they have the additional add-ons. So you can start with like up to 50 pounds. It goes from like 5, maybe even start later. My original set actually had like these inserts that would go on the handle, so you could start as low as like 2.5. You can move it up to, there were these 2.5 pound like cylinders that you could throw in there to add additional weight up to like 7.5. Then it moved to 10, and then 15, on up the thing to 50 pounds. And then from there you could buy these extension kits, take your 50 pounders and make them, you know, as much as 100 pounds and so forth. So, and they come with a little stand, or you can buy the optional little stand to like stay off the floor. They put them at like rack or waist height or whatever. I found those because I was working out and actually training. And when I first started Red Dot Fitness, I was training in the garage. I was training a few clients in the garage, and we had these, and they were awesome. They provided a lot versatility. Right? Yeah, they're very mobile, and they very small footprint. They don't take up a lot of space. So dumbbells, I think, are going to be a key for a lot of things, because you can use one, you can use both, and they can be used for virtually everything. I don't know. What's next on your list, guys?
Let's see. We talked about the power rack. We talked, a bench, an adjustable bench, a bench that inclines and then declines as well.
Yeah. There's so many things you can do with the bench, right? Obviously you can push from it, pull from it. You'd want one that was sturdy enough. So I encourage people to look for one that's got a nice
cheap
base foundation. Yeah. You're going to get what you pay for here.
Absolutely.
So you want something that's got a nice firm platform that you could even stand on without it being wobbly or starting to break down. I mean, there's a lot of cheap fitness equipment out there. It doesn't take long to find it. If you're going to make an investment, I would invest in a nice solid piece of equipment. Look, I like American-made steel, manufactured equipment, equipment that's manufactured here in the United States, shipped and built by people here in the United States. We have a lot of Rogue equipment on the floor that have been very good to us, but there's a lot of other companies out there. One of the things I like about Rogue is the shit is durable. It fucking holds up. And if I've had any kind of an issue with it, I just call them up and they handle the problem. And those issues have been like weird things. Like, I think you discovered this. Remember we have like 3 trap bars here, the big ones, like the 65 pounders. And like, it was weird. Like the knurl.
One was just like not machined.
Somehow it was like a flaw. Yeah. It was just a flaw. And called them up, sent them a picture, and like, got a new one in the mail for you right now. So, that was one example.
They let us keep that trap bar too.
So, and it's perfectly good. I was like, great. So the point of that is I like those guys from a sturdy perspective and a quality of equipment perspective.
I've never stepped foot on a piece of Rogue equipment, whether it's the Rhino belt squat, anything that they've created. It's always sturdy and robust and big. And that can be an issue sometimes with the spacing. But I mean, when I say big, like the Aerodyne bike that they have, I mean, it's when you get on, it's completely different than like the assault bike, right?
Right. The Echo bike is, I think, is what they call it. Yeah.
It's really good equipment, really well ergonomics.
Yeah. So we're not sponsored by Rogue at all. I wish we were, because we've spent a lot of money with them. But one of that is you want a bench, right? That's adjustable. So one that inclines, one that might decline, one that gives you some versatility. It comes with wheels, so you can move it around. A lot of things you can do with it. So if you got your dumbbells, your bench, and your rack, one of the things we haven't put on the rack yet is a bar, right? So let's talk about bars and plates. Because if you're going to get a bar, you got to get plates. And this is where, you know, if you're not already, your checkbook's not already like, you know, screaming at you, this is where things start to get a little bit wild and people don't really understand it. Like, when you look at weights, you're buying dumbbells or plates, you're usually paying a minimum of 30 cents a pound, right? So
if you start getting a calibration, it gets a lot higher.
Start to work your way up into the quality of the manufacturing, it's only going up from there.
Yeah.
So do the math. You know, like you get a 100-pound dumbbell, $300, right? So it's the shit isn't cheap. So you when you're looking at weights, I think there's ways for people to be economical here on their bars and their plates while still getting good quality. So I wanted to talk about that. So let's start with the bars.
For sure.
Because you could be really overwhelmed if you get onto a website and you're looking at like bars. So for the average person, let's talk about bars and kind of construction and things they could be looking for to make up their mind on what might make the most sense.
Well, I know we did our research on bars when we were opening you'd opened your first space and I was coming on to join you. And I wanted to bring an Olympic weightlifting set with us. And so we were looking at bars and the way they're constructed and bushings versus bearings and going back and forth as far as the dollar and the investment and how much use it's going to get and so on and so forth and how long we want it to last. So we went with the better bar. And there's a lot of different companies out there that make really good bars. But I think for a home gym, you probably don't need the bearings. Right. You probably could get by with bushings. So
13 years later, those bars are still on our floor being used today. And we have we've had zero issues with them. The point of this is when you're looking at bars, there's quality of material and construction, and then there's also the way they're constructed. And so if you think of those Olympic bars, generally they're about 45 pounds, 20 kilos if you're if you're looking at the more specifically for Olympic weightlifting. But let's talk about that. Like, what are you going to be doing with this bar?
Do you need it to rotate that well?
Right. So are you just going to be pulling on it? You're just going to be deadlifting with it, pushing it, squatting with it. Then the type of bar you buy or the amount of money you spend on your bar might not be that much. Unless, of course, this is not your general home gym owner, you're squatting 800 pounds.
And you want to go to that kabuki squat bar.
It fucking matters. Yeah, that shit matters when you start getting up to that. But it's not your average person with the home gym. So, when you're looking at these bars, like polyurethane bushings versus bearings, right, that they might be using in those sleeves. So that's the big part of the bar on the outside and how that rotates. Yeah, if you're Olympic lifting, this is very, very important, right, in terms of that bar rotating, it being smooth.
Can't be overstated.
Yeah, the tolerances on the bar and how it fits into the ring on the weight plate itself, onto the plate, onto the insert that's on the inside of that bumper plate, or if it's a cast iron or a cast plate, how that fits in there. That all that stuff becomes that much more important. The more precise or the more specific the lifting starts getting more towards Olympic weightlifting. But if you're just using it to do your basic stuff, you do not need to be spending $1,500, $2,000 on a bar. You can get a solid bar for a few $100, right? And what I encourage people to look at are like, how is that finished? What is that bar with? Because if it's sitting in your garage, what's one of the things you got to worry about all the time when it's sitting out in your garage during the seasons? You got to worry about it rusting, right? So you want to get one that you might spend the extra money to get the one that's Cerakoted or has a like an anodized finish on it so that it doesn't rust, because that's not something you want to be dealing with.
Most of Rogue stuff does have a nice powder.
We've never seen any rust on any Rogue bar ever. Going back to the Rogue stuff, we have Rogue bars, we have WorksOn bars here, and there's a few other Hamptons made some of our bars. We've got a couple Texas bars out there. Like, there's all different types of bars that you can get. Like, looking at the quality of construction and what really makes sense for you. Don't get too lost on this, I guess, as a consumer. Yeah.
I'm really into lifting, and I don't give a fuck about the bar.
You just get a bar that fits your budget, that also maybe covers some of those other things depending on what you're going to be doing with it. And again, like the whole rusting thing, that's important. Like, because if it's rusting outside, guess where else it's going to rust?
Yep.
It's going to rust inside. You don't want to be dealing with that. So there's a few different ways to go there, but a bar is going to be important. And then the next thing that goes on the bar is obviously the plates.
Yeah.
Bumper plates have become sort of the standard, right? Because they're cheaper to make, and they tend to be easier on the environment, right? And anybody that, going back to the rust thing and the durability of the different equipment, when we first started with the cheap bumper plates, man, they were terrible.
Are you talking about like the foam ones?
Yeah, dude, they were. Basically, it was like chunked rubber,
exactly,
right? And they pressed it together. It was like old car tires. They pressed it together, and it used to crumble. Yep. Right now, we've come a long way.
There was that, but then there was also the bumper plate. One of the gyms in the area had it, and the middle section was metal, and the outside was
insert
would come out.
Yeah, the inserts would come out. Those are the cheaper plates. These are things you want to be careful about. But again, this goes back to
how they're being used.
What is your use case?
Exactly.
What are you going to be using for them? Also, I want to talk about the footprint thing too. But if you're going to be Olympic lifting, spending a little bit more money on a quality bumper plate or set of quality bumper plates is going to be a little bit more important, right? They're definitely taking more wear and tear. That should make perfect sense. You're going to get what you pay for right here. So don't, if you're spending all this research on a bar and you're going to throw, because you want a good bar to fulfill the needs that you need it to fulfill, and you're going to throw caution to the wind when you're buying your plates, that doesn't make a lot of fucking sense.
Not at all.
So think about that.
Like throwing metal plates on there and thinking that it's going to rotate as well as the
bumpers, right? Yeah. So these things are designed differently, machined differently. And again, those tolerances have a lot to do with it. But the other thing with these bumper plates is a lot of the cheap, when I say cheap, just less expensive, it's more cheaply made. Bumper plates are very thick, right? So, and that takes up more space.
Yeah.
And that could be an issue for you, like especially if you're trying to stack your weights onto your rack and you have a pin. So you have your squat rack, and let's say it's not the one that folds against the wall, but you have a full size rack and you've got these pins on there. The width of those plates will obviously determine how many plates you can actually stack on that rack. So if you're limited on space, you might consider like, hey, I want the thinner plates because they'll take up less space, right? Same with on your bar and how you're lifting. Like if you don't have a lot of space to lift, like if you're lifting off, say, a set of mats or whatever, and maybe it's one mat that's 4 feet wide or 6 feet wide, and you start to stack these plates out there because you're starting to load those weights up on there. Some of your plates could be on your mat or not on your mat. And some people could be listening, that's just stupid, man, just get another mat. Not everybody has that option. Yeah. So that's all I'm saying is something to think about in terms of the plates that you buy. We have some very inexpensive plates that we bought for outside, and we have them on the little roller racks, and you start getting up around those 45-pound plates, and those things
like 3 inches wide, dude.
Yeah, more. Yeah, they're more than that. Huge. So
that, and then when you're having to get them up off the roller rack, I mean, you have to bend over, pick it up. Like,
it's a lot to deal with.
Ergonomically challenging, especially if you're short.
Well, other considerations for plates that come to mind for you guys in terms of buying plates?
Something that we talked about earlier was not necessarily investing in the 35-pound plates or the 15-kilo plates because they just take up space. So start with maybe 10-pound plates and then jump to or 25-pound plates and then jump to 45s, and then you have smaller plates that you can augment for in between your 10s and your 45.
Yeah.
25.
There's a thing about this that's going around for a long time. What use does a 35-pound plate have? So when you look at the bumpers, they're supposed to all be, or they should all be the same diameter, right? So they're the same size, top to bottom. Yep. So they just weigh different amounts. And so if you're looking to make the jump from 25 up near 45, so typical plates are 45 pounds. And again, like the next size down would be 35 or 25. If you took the 35s out and you just spent your money on the 25s, but you bought yourself a couple of extra 10s, or you're going to get way more variety out of those 10-pound plates as you start to stack more weight on the bar. Absolutely. Or change plates that you might buy. Those will be the smaller, typically metal plates that go on, on the outsides. Don't waste your money on the 35-pound plates. Do the math, like how much weight do I need and how much can I get out of like one set of 25s? That's all you need. The rest should be 45s, 10 pounds or in anything less than that in order to make your...
Yeah, I was going to say I'd probably invest in a set of 5s, a set of 10s, and then you have your 25s and then your 45s.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be, and that's how these things... When you sort of buy an Olympic set, it was like my first Olympic set was like 310 pounds or whatever it was. It was the bar, set of 45s, 35s, 25s, 10s, 5s, and 2.5s with collars. That's why I can't remember because I can't remember which collars, if they were the spring collars or the big
weighted collars.
Yeah, the weighted collars that were on there. I can't remember what the final weight was, if it was like 305 or 315 or something like that, but that's what it typically looked like. And I wished I'd had just another set of 45s. Could you have just kept the 35s and charged me a little bit more for an extra set of 45s? That would have gotten me a lot further down the road over time, because then I would have had to invest less to incrementally add more to eventually where I needed another set of 45s. So something to think about when you're buying bars and plates.
Yeah. The other thing is too, when buying the plates, I actually like the weightlifting plates because the circumference is the same. Whereas if you go with I don't know what they're called, the other plates are called, but they're like the hex plates. They
Right.
come in different sizes. So your
round versus hex.
So your 25s are smaller in diameter than your 45s. And but the other thing
If
is
you
I don't like
have hex shaped weights, you just throw them the fuck
I was
away.
going to say the other thing is I don't like them because then if you go to put them on the floor, they roll.
Don't even get me started with that shit, dude.
Yeah,
You have to put them down precisely or else they shift.
Dude,
those came out many years ago. I mean, Ivan Co was like the standard weight plate in the gyms for a long time, and those were all circular metal plates. And then somebody got the wise idea to make them into, they're actually not hex, they're octagonal.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
And they had like little handles that you could reach in there and grab, and they were convenient as fuck. And by the way, if all you're doing is bench pressing and throwing them on the and back squatting and throwing them on like the hammer strength machines, the hip sleds, those type of pieces of equipment, it was all fine. But as soon as you moved anything that was ground based, or needed to be put on the ground or put to the floor at the end of the day, they suck. So something to be aware of. Now, if that's all you have access to, you got to deal with it.
Do it.
But if you're going to make an investment, don't buy those.
Probably the biggest thing I would say with plates is like Cece said, the size, right? And it depended on what you're doing. If you're not, if you can deadlift more than, 65 pounds, you're not really going to be worried about having the bar in tens, right? But if you are the person that's trying to learn how to squat or, explode overhead, clean, overhead press, anything like this, from the floor position where I want to be every time, right? I don't want to be in a lower position trying to learn how to deadlift, right? So I have a 10-pound plane. It's the same size as the 45
pound.
Right? So the bar on the floor is the bar on the floor. It's the same height. If I had 300 pounds there or if I had 65 pounds there. And that's probably the biggest takeaway I could give for somebody. You don't want to be deadlifting off the floor off of these little
like
5
plates, 5 pound plates. Yeah.
So if you set yourself up with the 45s, the 25s, the 10s, and then maybe some change plates, you're in a really good position to kind of just add on from there. Would be adding your incremental adds and investment would be 45-pound plates, right from there, or 20 kilos, whatever. Depending on what you're buying. They do have 25 kilo plates or more. You could get those, but again, you're going to be limited there over time. Unless again, you're lifting pretty heavy weight and you want to do that, you do it. You do you. Okay. Bars, plates, bench, rack, dumbbells, adjustable dumbbells. By the way, going back to the dumbbells that we talked about, like there's a few different brands out there. The ones that we mentioned, like the power blocks, I'm gonna put a little cautionary statement in here. If you see the ones that have the dials on them, I would steer clear of those. I don't think you're going to be happy with those longer term. They get a little flimsy, and they're very awkward. And part of the thing with those is like if you think about like if you go into your gym, and if you've seen like the molded 100-pound dumbbells versus the old school, I just mentioned the brand Ivan Co, the plated 100-pound dumbbells. The molded ones are bigger, they're longer, they have more volume, right, on either end. And that can become challenging when you're doing things like pushing or pulling or trying to go over a head or whatever else. That's the same problem you run into when you go into those ones that have the dial on it versus the ones that are more squared and have the pin adjustment on there. So things to think about in terms of making your investment. Just heading back to the dumbbells. All right, so those are our basics. Any other things from like the absolute minimum amount of stuff that you would need, like in a gym to be in a really good position to make some good gains?
You know what I really like? I like our Superbands.
Yeah, the bands.
I think because they come in so many different widths and what's the word I'm looking for? Tension. As far as based on the width, you can do so much with those. If you wanted to push single arm, if you wanted to pull, you wanted to augment some of your deadlifts. There's just a variety of things that you can do with those, and they don't cost that much relative.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the monetary investment there is minimal. So there's a ton of variety. Again, going back to our programs and how we set people up, like if you look at our Max and Strong programs, which are really your self-guided programs that you should be able to do, what we suggest these for somebody that has a well-equipped home gym or has access to a more of a full commercial style gym. You're going to have way more variety and you're going to be able to do all these things. But we have set it up and we give people options. This is the same with our online membership to like, if you have just the equipment that we talked about, you're going to be able to do 90% of the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There are some other things that you might want to add in there. Like you mentioned, the bands. Tubing is something that's a relatively inexpensive investment. Medicine balls for, or Dynamax balls, which again, relatively inexpensive, all things considered. But they take up space, and those are extras, and they are fairly, kind of, they're multi-dimensional, but not as dimensional as say barbell, dumbbells, rack, bands.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of where our heads are around being able to design a really effective program for building strength, power, hypertrophy, and ultimately, a better physique. But if you're looking to like really step it up, so kind of moving away from those basics, then there's all kinds of other things that you could throw in there. But before we get to that, let's talk about what I hear people doing when they're trying to bargain with their fitness and bargain with their equipment. When they're building the home gym, because once they start to get into figuring out how much it really costs, they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. So then they go down to fucking Target or Walmart and they wind up spending $100 on like this 12-pound kettlebell that they found sitting on the shelf, a Dynadisc, a tubing setup, which is garbage, right? And again, they're already deep onto a credit card and they have stuff that it's not going to help them longer term. Like it's just a really poor investment. It's like an emotional investment. Well, I'm going to go get this workout done at home. Yeah, but how far are you going to get with that shit? It doesn't make a lot of sense. What that looked like to me is a very emotional, uninformed decision about how you were going to buy your fitness equipment. Like, what is your program supposed to look like? Just having a kettlebell or two, again, without a lot of direction,
Mm-hmm.
right, and good coaching is probably not going to get you very far. We have a kettlebell program here that, if you had basically 2 sets of kettlebells, we could get you a lot done in that amount of time. But that also comes with a high level of awareness, and your ability to get through a program on your own. That's a neither here nor there statement. My point of this is I see people making really poor investments, and then they want a program design. Then they go out like, okay, well, I have what I just mentioned. And then they look for an exercise program that supports the equipment that they have.
Yeah,
okay.
That's rough.
That's fucked up thinking. Like, you need to find out what your program should look like and then make investment in what the equipment you should have to support that over time.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you start with a little bit less again, and then move to more over time. But what are the staples that I need now? Not the other way around. What do I think I should have? And then match that against the reality of what the program should look like. That is not rooted in a lot of logic. So think about that, because I get to people like, oh, well, I have all this equipment. What can we do? I'm like, not much, not a lot. Like for a minute, we can do some stuff, and then that's going to have to change. Now, if I wanted to go into a situation where I'm trying to build like the ultimate physique and a more advanced lifter, or maybe not even, but I want to really work on more of the physique training and have all these other things available to me. Finance is not an issue. Space is not such an issue. What are some of the other things that you guys would add to the gym? And this is going to be like I would definitely have to have this, type of stuff. Like, again, nobody's putting any limitations on you. What would you have?
I'd want a vertical cable machine. So to elaborate on that, where you can have the adjustments vertically up and down, and you could have a variety of different attachments that you can use to pull or to push or to rotate. So you have that external load. If funds were unlimited, dual.
Yeah, double stack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dual stack. Yeah, agreed. Like cables are so versatile, right? And again, just the resistance profile that they have, I would have to agree with you. Yep. Like if I could get
movable arms.
Yeah, so they go up and down. So the adjustments go from the floor to the top of the stacks, whatever height they are. A lot of companies make some really great ones out there that they'll fit like in more of like a 8 to 10 foot ceiling height type of gym. So if you don't have a lot of,
you can hang them off the rack too. They have ones that attach to the rack now, and then you plate load them on the bottom.
That goes back to having that rack as your base setup. Yeah. So this is why I wanted to compare and contrast this. It's not that you have to have more space to have the cable stuff. It's not going to be as cool. It certainly won't be as convenient. It takes a little bit more work and a little bit more setup, but it's very doable. And this type of equipment has come a long way to where you can set up a pull down, right? Where you can have these different attachments or a push or a rotation or whatever, where you're adding the plates that you already have or even a dumbbell or a kettlebell that you might already have as the external load. Yeah. I love a good cable setup. And if I could only have one, I'd still take it, like one stack. But if I could have the double stack, obviously that gives me a lot of versatility. And with that, generally, if you have a double stack, it also gives you something to hang from or hang other stuff from for pull-ups or knee ups or, toes to bar type stuff. You can, if you didn't have that on your squat rack already, you had some other type of setup, or that squat rack is like at the ceiling. And, you can't pull up because you're
past the bar because you're going to hit your head.
I've seen people remove panels or actually literally cut holes in the drywall right above. So like in the rafters, they've set themselves up so they can do a pull up and their head can literally go up into the attic, right, or the attic space or the crawl space above. So things to think about. What about you, man?
So for me, it's going to be a deadlift platform of some sort so I can attach bands to it because I'm masochistic like that. And then, it's between the leg press and a belt squat, dude.
Oh, yeah.
But like, I'm telling you right now, every time I do legs somewhere where there's not a leg press and it's in my program and I switch it out for something else, and nothing's going to replicate this, but like a heavy step up or something like that, it doesn't work. It doesn't feel good. I love a good leg press for me.
So you picked two different pieces of equipment, but tell me why you like those so much.
I like them because they load the conventional pattern in a different way, right? So it's really a lot like when you see these powerlifters, a lot of these guys, they're doing belt squats. They're doing a whole bunch of different things in the off season to strengthen all of the weak areas. That's why I really enjoy powerlifting and watching these guys, because they're like, well, what's weak? Let's go get it fucking strong.
The smart ones do, yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, the guys that are actually called powerlifters, right? They're lifting like 800 pounds. They're actually competing. They're not, no, I like to lift heavy weights. Like, no, like these guys actually fucking step on stage and get busy. But yeah, that belt
squat or that leg press, effectively you can load the lower extremity without loading the back, right? Yeah. And so you can really focus. And the challenge with those things is the footprint, right? Just like with the double cable stack is the footprint. So if you have space, you had to pick one, which one would it be?
Leg press.
I knew you were going to say that.
Dude, leg press. But I love the belt squat. I mean, dude, yeah, but leg press for sure. I mean, it's a staple. Now, they're not all created equal.
Nope.
But Rogue makes a great one. They should sponsor us, dude.
With all the stuff that we have.
We're going to throw this at them.
Yeah.
Leg press for sure.
Yeah, I got you. It is a solid piece of equipment. For me, if I had to pick, something else, there's a couple other things that actually be smaller pieces and, just little things to kind of throw in there to change it up. One of those is like a suspension trainer. I really like suspension trainers, not because they're going to build a tremendous amount of muscle and whatever else. I just think they're versatile, and they allow me to. They always put me in a position that'll challenge me, or I can find a position all the time that'll challenge me in one way or another. And so you go back to some of the other talks we've had about challenging stability, balance, and body weight. And I try to include a lot of body weight exercises in my routine these days. Rings got really popular there for a while in like the CrossFit gyms, and rings are great. It's very similar but different. But the rings, where people were really using them were where they were attached to something that had a very high ceiling. So they had clearance to where they could get up into like a muscle up or in higher, right? And just there's more clearance, and you don't get that in a lot of home gyms. You just don't have that kind of ceiling space in a lot of spaces. I mean, we have rings here and we have some suspension trainers, but I like a solid suspension trainer for a few different reasons. It's also mobile. So if I wanted to take it with me, I throw it in the van, throw it in the car or whatever. If I just wanted something different to keep myself, again, provide that stimulus when I'm out and about. I like that they're to have that. One of the things that we talked about but didn't really talk about was tubing. Mm-hmm. We talked about bands. But tubing with like handles on it. There's so many different things you can do with tubing, and it's fucking inexpensive. It's really a cheap spend. And I love the resistance profile that it gives. That it gives you. It's a little bit different. It's so versatile. I can challenge myself in so many different ways with it. And a lot of people are like, dude, you're not going to get big and strong with tubing. Fucking come here and train with me, and I'll show you how to do it. Like it's just because the piece of equipment isn't obsolete. Your fucking training program is. It's deficient, and you can get big, strong, and different. in different ways than you're probably thinking right now, using tubing. So I love the use of tubing. We have tubing gets used in every single one of our programs. It's part of the deal.
Yeah, and you can use it as a standalone, or you can use it with dumbbells.
Yeah.
You know?
All right, so those are some of the favorites that we might put in. There's obviously a ton of other shit. Like, I mean, you could put the
sauna, cold plunge. Yeah. Don't get me started, dude. Are you serious right now?
You got pushing machines, pulling machines, things like that. I mean, there's some really great ones out there. I love a solid plate-loaded pull, particularly one that can be done isolaterally. I think, you know, some of the best back workouts I've ever had in my life would have been on some of those like hammer strength, single arm pull, and double arm pull type machine. Yeah, really good job there. So some of those kind of things. If you had space, you had money, and you had time to get it all together and put it all in there, so many different ways you could go. What are some of the things you would never fucking buy for a home gym?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Well,
Smith machine.
I know a lot of people and bodybuilders specific that use this because it's less, you need less stability from your own body, right? So it's like a machine, right? I'm just getting in here, I'm getting a workout. I don't need to try as hard, right? I don't need to brace myself. I don't need to actually know how to squat, right? The reason why I would not buy that is because if you're going to squat, you're going to put something on your back, the skill, you need to have that, and you're going to be able to produce copious amounts of muscle being able to stabilize that bar rather than going under the bar over time and using the Smith machine to stabilize you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just go to your leg press machine that you wanted. Like, I'd put the money from the Smith machine into the leg press, or the leg sled that you were going to buy before.
For me, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. And especially when I see people, and when I say see people, this is like corporate gym style. I'll be in the gym and like they'll take their client over the Smith machine because they can't squat. But what are you doing? Because the second the barbell gets on their back and they're out of the Smith machine, it's not going to translate. Right. So I that to me is an obsolete machine.
I think it's a limited. It's definitely.
Don't get me wrong. There's definitely some uses for it. I've used it before, and
same.
You know, but
for the footprint it takes up, the cost. There's also a lot of mechanicals on a machine like that. They do break down. That's not something I would be investing my money on. Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
How about you, CC? What wouldn't you buy, or wouldn't you advise?
Let's see. Probably some of the cardio equipment that we have in our studio.
Yeah, why? What and why?
Well, I've already talked about the fact that if we have it at home, which we actually have a bike, it's all about environment for me and usability. So, I mean, it's mindset and it's sat there. But I also have two very nice bikes that I can take outside.
Yep.
I have my legs that are very functional, so I could go out for a walk if I want to go walking or hiking. So I don't really need a treadmill. You know, they take up too much space. I don't think people generally use them. They cost a lot of money. I also think about, God, if I had to move,
yeah, where would
I'd have to move that too. But yeah, I mean, I would rather put my money in a power rack or something else like that versus a piece of cardio equipment. The other thing is too, if you know how to exercise and you know how to use your resistance training, you can get your cardio that way.
So I agree with you on a lot of things, and I have some other things to add to that. First off, if I'm going to make that, the most expensive area in any gym. So if you looked at square footage, right, when you walk into mostly, you mentioned the commercial gyms, right? Yeah. One of the first things you see when you walk through the door is the cardio area, right? And there's rows and rows of treadmills, rows and rows of bikes, rows and rows of ellipticals, and whatever else. That is the most expensive real estate in the entire gym. That equipment costs more money up front and in the long term than any other piece of equipment. So what you're basically buying is a piece of equipment that depreciates exponentially the moment it leaves the showroom floor or arrives at your house or whatever else. The return on investment that you get from that is very limited most of the time, right? Most of the time. Everybody knows somebody that's got a bike, treadmill, elliptical trainer sitting in their garage, in their home office, in their basement that is right now collecting laundry. It is an expensive laundry hanger, right? It just sits there. It doesn't do anything. Why? Because it's limited. It does very little, right? It does one thing, right? And that's it. It may get your heart rate up, it may get your respiratory rate up, and that's it. It sits there, it doesn't move anywhere, it doesn't provide you any other thing than that. To your point, CC, if you're motivated and you want to get on that, that's your only, that's the only thing you have right now, great. But to spend money on that for a home gym, particularly going back to the use case where this is all I have and I have limited budget and limited space, I don't want a treadmill taking up that space. Now, if my fitness goals are very specific to running, right? Like I'm a marathon runner and I need to get mileage in, and running outside is prohibitive for a couple of reasons. One, maybe it's weather. Two, maybe it's safety. Like for anybody that knows me knows that that's a concern that I always have for people that are outside in the world, like getting outside in your neighborhood, because the only time you can run is after dark, early morning, before the sun comes up, maybe in an area that's not so great. Or again, going back to weather, like it's prohibitive because it's snowing and raining constantly outside and it's tough to get it done. Then maybe a treadmill could be a solid investment of your resources. But if your goal is general health wellness, I would not spend my money on a piece of equipment like that. I would just take your $30 a month.
Yeah.
You'd spend $2,500 on a treadmill. Just take $30 a month and go down to wherever the local gym and pay your membership to get on the treadmill there. Let them deal with the repairs. Yep. Let them deal with that, with that basically that real estate that they have to pay rent on. Don't use that up in your own space. You will likely regret this. I think it's
huge expense.
You'll end up regretting this in the end. And the benefit that you get from that, going back to what you said there, Cece, is I could get way more physiological impact out of having a squat rack and a barbell than I'm ever going to get off of the treadmill. Anybody that listens to the show knows we talk heavily about the importance of cardio and all the benefits that it brings. I'm just saying, like, I can get all of that from the equipment that we mentioned before, and I'm probably near what a good treadmill, that's a whole other piece of this. Like, if you want a good treadmill, one that's going to, all right, I am making the investment because this is important for me, then $2,500 is the very low end of treadmills.
Well, I was going to say, if you're really going to want a good treadmill, I would go with a commercial treadmill.
1,000%. And
not one of those home ones.
And the $2,500 is a down payment, by the way, on one of those. So any self-respecting runner that gets on treadmills, and people can say this is you're wrong, this is a bold statement. I don't know. I've been around a lot. I used to run a lot. I used to compete, and part of that competing was running. I've run on a lot of treadmills and I hated them all, but I know a good one from a bad one. And as a gym operator, I also know what ends up lasting for a long time. And I know what's good for your body and not for your body. So if you walk in, and you know who else knows about these? The people that implement a ton of running into their programs in their gyms. Just go to an Orange Theory or an F45 or whatever. Those treadmills that they have on their floor, that's the most expensive piece of equipment, single piece of equipment they have on their floor. And they've got 30 of them or whatever else. They buy those for a reason, because they are the easiest on the body. They hold up over time, and it is a good return on investment. So if you're gonna spend that kind of money, $4, $5, $6 on a treadmill, think about that. Like, is that really worth it? I'm not sure I would be going down that path. This brings me to maybe the last point I would have, and that is this. As we've talked through this and bringing all this together, for those of you thinking long and hard about building a home gym and what may or may not be the best for you, again, if money and finance and space is not an issue for you, more power to you. Go hog wild. Have, a home gym built on the property and visit it every day or visit it never. That's up to you. I want you to use it, right? But I hope what this maybe also does is, as you start to look down this path, you maybe start to appreciate the investment that your $30 or $40 a month at the local gym will actually get you, right? You can have access to all kinds of stuff for $30 or $40. There's no excuse. Everybody can find $30 or $40 right in their budget if they really want to get fit. Now, there's also the $140 a month membership. I'm going to tell you something. When you walk into that gym, there's nothing different on that floor than what's in the $40 a month gym. There isn't. It is the exact same shit. Some of it may look a little nicer. It may smell a little nicer in there. It may be a little newer. But that equipment that's in there, it is the same fucking equipment. It's the same thing. It'll get you the same result. And it's just a little step up from what we were talking about than what you had in that home gym, that garage gym that we talked about where there was very little equipment. You can get all the same things done in there. So maybe you'll start to appreciate the investment that some of those companies and some of those gym owners have made in that space, and how little an investment it is for you to go down there and pay them to get your ass in that gym and get it in shape.
Hell yeah.
Right. So as you're walking away and you're thinking about your home gym and where I need to make my investment or whatnot, there were some key points that got brought up here about let's make a logical, rational, well planned out decision. What should my workout plan look like? Then I'll buy equipment based on that. There are some basics that you can buy to get yourself started. I would start there anyway, even if your time and money is not a problem for you and space isn't a problem for you anyway. Start small. See if you even use that shit, and then start building on top of that next. And for those of you that are out there that have these home gyms that have never used or you never use and you got all this equipment, sell that shit. Because there are people out there right now that are maybe in the boat that we talked about that are looking to build stuff out or have a little bit more to do a little bit more with. And they'll buy that stuff off you, and there's a really good resale market for it as well. So I don't think there's anything that we haven't covered today. You guys think of anything?
Nope.
All right. Bottom line: get your ass out there and get working out.
Hell yeah.